The room full of awards, yet empty of love, what Yu Minglong left behind. The door creaked open to a silence that weighed heavier than grief itself. Dust floated lazily through the air, illuminated by thin slices of light sneaking past the velvet curtains. The scent of cold tea lingered in the room, faint but haunting, like the last trace of a man who once smiled for millions but never for himself. Yu Minglong's home was not what one might expect of a star. No lavish chandeliers, no glimmering signs of excess, just a quiet apartment, neat to the point of loneliness. The walls were adorned with framed posters from his dramas, moments frozen in time, smiles that once melted hearts across the world. Yet beneath each captured smile was a ghostly reminder it was all performance. The centerpiece of the room was a long glass cabinet filled with awards, rows upon rows of golden trophies, plaques engraved with his name, certificates framed in perfection. They sparkled when the morning sun hit them, their brilliance almost painful to look at. It was as if the room itself wanted to scream, "Look how loved he was." But love, he knew, was never measured in applause. The people who found him that morning said it looked like he had simply fallen asleep. There was no struggle, no chaos, just calm stillness, as though he had finally found the peace that fame never allowed him to touch. On the bedside table lay a half-written letter, his handwriting elegant but trembling toward the end. It wasn't addressed to anyone. It began with two simple words, "I tried." In the quiet corners of his apartment, there were signs of a man who once loved deeply. A stack of letters never sent, a guitar leaning against the wall, its strings gathering dust, a notebook filled with lyrics that spoke of loneliness disguised as poetry. There was even a birthday card, unopened, with his name written in careful, looping handwriting. Someone had remembered him, but perhaps it had come too late. The world saw Yu Minglong as a man who had everything: fame, beauty, success, endless adoration. But those who truly looked saw the exhaustion behind his eyes. The interviews, the fan meetings, the rehearsed laughter, each moment a layer of armor covering a slowly collapsing heart. He was the man everyone wanted to see, but no one wanted to truly know. People often said his smile could light up a room, but in the end his home was lit only by the dim glow of his achievements. Those silent witnesses to a life that looked perfect but felt unbearably hollow. His awards reflected light, yes, but no warmth. His photos smiled, but no soul looked back. Friends described him as gentle, kind, and impossibly humble. He never complained. He was the first to arrive on set and the last to leave. But there was something about the way he lingered in empty hallways, the way he gazed out of car windows during interviews, the way his smile sometimes trembled before settling back into perfection. It was as though he lived his life behind glass, visible, adored, but never truly touched. In one of his last interviews, when asked what happiness meant to him, Yu Minglong paused. He gave his usual soft smile and said, "Happiness is being understood." It was the kind of answer that seemed simple, almost poetic. But those who knew him best said it was one of the truest things he ever said. Because in a world that constantly demanded him to perform, no one ever stopped to understand the man behind the character. The room where he spent his final hours reflected exactly that, a perfect metaphor for the life he led. Everything was beautiful, polished, immaculate, but beneath that perfection was an unbearable emptiness. His awards cabinet, filled with proof of the world's love, stood only a few steps from the bed where he took his last breath, a cruel reminder that recognition and affection are not the same thing. There were messages flooding his phone even after his passing. "Please tell me this is a rumor. You can't be gone. You were my reason to smile." Fans cried across continents, posting old photos, replaying his scenes, writing letters he would never read. His name trended worldwide, not because of a new film or a song, but because he was gone. Somewhere in the middle of all that digital mourning, people began asking, how could someone who seemed so happy, so beloved, be so lonely? The answer lay in the silence of that room. Every trophy represented a performance. Every award symbolized validation. But none of them replaced a human voice saying, "I see you," not the version of you on screen. The real you. Fame had given him applause but stolen intimacy. It gave him light but took away warmth. It built him a stage but took away a home. In that final space, there were no fans, no cameras, no scripts to hide behind. Just him, the boy who once dreamed of being seen. The man who became visible to the world but invisible to himself. One could imagine him sitting there the night before, surrounded by all his achievements, the city lights bleeding faintly through the curtains. Perhaps he ran his fingers along the edge of a trophy, its cold metal mirroring his reflection, flawless but lifeless. Perhaps he read one of those unsent letters, or maybe he simply stared into the dark, wondering when his life had stopped belonging to him. The tragic irony of Yu Menglong's story was that he was never unloved. He was misunderstood. People loved his characters, his voice, his face, but few loved him. The gentle silences between his words, the way his laughter sometimes faded too quickly, the loneliness that lingered even in his eyes, those were the parts of him that no one noticed until it was too late. Now, that room stands as a monument of what he left behind. The trophies remain untouched, the letters still sealed, the guitar still leaning. The air feels frozen, as if time itself refuses to move on. Visitors describe a strange stillness there, a feeling as though the walls remember him, whispering the kind of love he was never able to hold in life. Outside, the world keeps spinning. Fans continue to post tributes. Old videos resurface, interviews replayed, his voice echoing across platforms. But inside that room, nothing changes. It remains as he left it, full of everything he worked for and empty of everything he needed. It is easy to romanticize tragedy, to say that pain creates art, that loneliness gives birth to beauty. But the truth is much sadder. Pain doesn't make art, it devours the artist. It took Yu Menglong piece by piece, smile by smile, until all that was left was a shell of the man the world thought they knew. In the end, his story isn't just about fame or depression. It's about the quiet spaces between applause, the moments when the lights go off and the cheering fades, and the artist is left staring at his reflection, wondering if anyone ever saw him beyond the glow of success. When they cleared out his apartment weeks later, someone noticed something strange. All the trophies were covered in a thin layer of dust, except for one, an early award he'd won before fame truly hit. It was slightly scratched, imperfect, but it was the one he had clearly touched most often. Maybe because it reminded him of simpler times, before everything became performance, before he had to smile for survival. That single award was placed on his grave, not as a symbol of victory, but of remembrance. It was the piece of his past that still felt human. The night before he was found, the city outside was alive, traffic lights flickering, fans waiting outside studios, cameras flashing somewhere far away. But in his apartment, everything stood still. The ticking of the wall clock echoed like a heartbeat that didn't belong there anymore. His phone vibrated once, twice, then fell silent, messages piling up, none of which he would ever open again. The room was a portrait of contradiction. Beauty and loneliness coexisted in every corner. His reflection on the glass of the award shelf looked like a stranger, a man who had achieved everything except peace. The light from the city filtered through the curtains, landing on his trophies like faint halos, but even gold looked dull in the absence of life. On the floor, a script lay open to a scene he never finished rehearsing. The words seemed heavy with irony. He smiles, but his eyes tell another story. It was the kind of line that once made him famous, that subtle melancholy behind charm, that rare ability to make sadness look beautiful. But this time there was no camera, no director yelling cut. Just silence. He once said in an interview that he kept every fan letter he received. And he did. Dozens of them were stacked neatly in a small wooden box. tied together with a blue ribbon. They were filled with adoration, people thanking him for saving them from loneliness, for being their light during dark times. The irony was unbearable. He had been the light in countless lives, yet no one noticed that his own flame was flickering out. Sometimes late at night he would sit at his piano and play soft melodies that no one ever heard. His neighbors said they would faintly hear him humming, songs that weren't released, lyrics never written down. Those who knew him well said those were the truest versions of him. Not the actor, not the singer, but the soul trying to whisper something the world refused to hear. The world adored the man who smiled. But the man who stayed quiet? They never looked for him. The deeper you looked into that room, the more you realized it was more than just a living space. It was a museum of his solitude. Every item was a story left unfinished. A mug half filled with cold coffee. A candle burnt down to its last inch. A camera still on, its red light blinking, as though it had been waiting for him to press record. And in that waiting, there was heartbreak. The silence in the room wasn't just the absence of sound. It was the echo of years of pretending. For every award he held, there was a night he cried off camera. For every smile on stage, there was a tear wiped away behind closed doors. He was the man who gave joy professionally and lived sorrow privately. The truth was, Yu Menglong had never truly belonged to himself. Fame had stolen him early, piece by piece. Every smile became currency, every emotion performance. Somewhere between the flashing lights and rehearsed interviews, he lost the sound of his own laughter. Even his reflection, polished and perfect, stopped feeling familiar. They say a star's home should shine, but his felt like a confession written in shadows. His walls, once white, had turned faintly gray from years without laughter. His awards glistened under the lamplight, but not one of them looked touched recently. His fans believed he spent his nights celebrating his success, but the truth was quieter, sadder. Most nights he sat alone with his own silence, scrolling through old photos, as if searching for the boy he used to be before the world demanded perfection. There's something haunting about the way perfection kills joy. He had been loved by millions, but not one person saw him clearly enough to save him. To them, he was an ideal, an image, a dream. And dreams are easy to love because they don't ask for anything real. In one of his journals, found hidden in the drawer beside his bed, he wrote, "They call it love when they cheer for you, but love shouldn't feel so lonely." That line has since been quoted endlessly online, written under photos of him smiling, turned into tributes and murals. But few realize those words were written long before his death. He had been calling out for help, not in shouts, but whispers, hoping anyone would listen. When investigators gathered his belongings, they found something that broke everyone's heart. A small piece of paper taped to his mirror. In his handwriting, simple and fragile, it read, "Don't forget to be kind, even to yourself." He must have written it for himself, a reminder he tried to live by but couldn't hold on to. It's almost poetic, the man known for his tenderness, reminding himself to be gentle in a world that rarely was. After his death, his room became a place of pilgrimage for those who loved him. Fans left flowers, letters, candles, photos, their tears staining the wooden floors. Some whispered apologies into the air, as though his spirit might still be listening. Others simply stood there, staring at the empty chair by the window, trying to imagine what he must have felt in those final moments. The city outside continued to glow, but inside, everything remained untouched. The trophies still sparkled. The fan letters still smelled faintly of perfume and paper. The bed remained neatly made, except for the pillow that still carried the weight of his last night. It is said that when someone leaves the world, the things they loved most hold their energy. In that room, it's as if his soul never truly left, trapped between the applause of the world and the quiet he sought for so long. The awards glittered like ghosts, whispering reminders of what he gave to the world. But the emptiness between them screamed louder, that all the recognition, all the validation, could not replace a single heartbeat of genuine connection. What Yu Menglong left behind wasn't just trophies or fame, it was a story, a warning written in silence, a testament that no amount of success can fill the void of not being seen for who you are. In a world obsessed with perfection, he became its casualty, a man applauded for his light while dying in its shadow. And maybe that's why his story haunts so many now. Because deep down, everyone understands what it feels like to smile for the world while quietly falling apart inside. He was not just a celebrity, he was a mirror reflecting our own loneliness. If you walk into that room today, it still feels alive, like he might return at any moment, humming softly, brushing his fingers across the trophies he worked so hard for. But he won't. The light that once made those trophies shine came from him, and when he left, the room dimmed forever. The world remembers him through his films, his music, his smile. But the truest memory of Yu Menglong lives not in his performances, but in that quiet room where golden statues glistened and a lonely heart stopped beating. He left behind everything a man could dream of, except the one thing he needed most. Not fame, not applause, just love, real, human, unconditional love. And maybe that's what makes the silence in that room so heavy, because it's not just mourning him, it's mourning everything he never got to feel.